Picture this, you're at a party or maybe standing in the break room at work. There's a drink in your hand that you don't really want. Someone walks up to you. They smile. You smile back. But inside, your stomach clenches like a fist. Then they say it. Those 5 dreaded words, crazy weather we're having. Or maybe, so what do you do? And in that exact moment, something shifts. It's not just boredom. There's a physical sensation, like someone just unplugged you from a power source. Your battery drains from 100 to 0 in a heartbeat. You're nodding, you're smiling, you're giving all the scripted answers. But behind your eyes, there's this silent scream. You're scanning for exits. You're wondering why this harmless, everyday interaction feels like dragging boulders uphill in the rain. If this sounds familiar, I need to tell you something that might just change everything. You're not antisocial. You're not awkward. And you're definitely not arrogant, even though people have probably called you that. The truth is far more interesting than any of those labels. Over the next few minutes, we're going to explore what's actually happening inside your brain when someone tries to make small talk with you. It turns out that for a specific group of people, superficial conversation triggers a threat response in the brain that's nearly identical to physical pain. While the rest of the world uses small talk as social glue, as a way to bond and feel safe, your brain rejects it completely. It processes it as noise, as interference, as something to escape. Most people think hating small talk is a character high flaw. They tell you to just fake it till you make it, to be more friendly, to lighten up. But what if I told you that your distaste for shallow conversation is actually a biological mechanism? What if your brain is designed to hunt for dopamine in a completely different way than most people? We're going to dissect the neuroscience of human connection. We'll explore why your brain craves the deep end of the pool and outright refuses to wade in the shallows. We'll look at oxytocin, the bonding hormone, and why it doesn't fire for you during polite chit-chat. We'll examine the link between high sensitivity and your amygdala, the brain's fear center, and why pleasant conversation might actually be triggering your fight or flight response. By the end, you won't just understand why you hate discussing the weekend. You'll understand that this trait is actually a filter, a highly evolved screening process designed to protect your energy for the connections that genuinely matter. You'll stop feeling guilty for being the quiet one in the corner. You'll realize you're simply wired for a different frequency. A frequency that's rare, powerful, and absolutely necessary in a world drowning in noise. But first, we need to understand the trap. We need to look at why society is obsessed with small talk and why you feel like an alien every time you're forced to participate. Let's dive in. To understand why small talk feels like torture, we first need to understand the currency of human interaction. That currency is dopamine. For most people, social interaction is like a reliable vending machine. You put in a coin, a comment about the weather, a compliment on someone's shoes, and the machine dispenses a little treat. The brain releases a microdose of oxytocin and dopamine. This is the reward system working exactly as evolution designed it. It reinforces tribal bonds. It whispers, "You're safe. You're part of the group. Keep doing this." But for you, the machine is broken. You insert the coin. You expend the effort to smile and ask the polite questions, but nothing comes out. Your brain doesn't release that soothing chemical reward for superficial exchanges. This is the first scientific reality you need to accept. You're not being difficult. You're suffering from a reward deficit. When you engage in small talk, you're doing work without getting paid. Imagine going to a job where everyone else gets a paycheck every hour, but you have to work for 8 straight hours before you see a single dollar. That's exactly what your social life feels like. You're expending enormous amounts of cognitive energy to decode social cues, to feign interest, to regulate your facial expressions, but you're getting zero chemical return on that investment. No wonder you feel exhausted. No wonder irritability creeps in. Your brain is screaming at you to stop wasting resources on an activity that yields no biological profit whatsoever. But here's where it gets more complicated. For many of you, the problem isn't just a lack of reward. There's also the presence of a threat. This brings us to the concept of the highly sensitive person, or HSP. If you identify as an introvert or an HSP, your amygdala, the part of your brain responsible for processing threats and fear, is wired with a higher sensitivity than average. Research shows that for HSPs, shallow conversation can actually trigger a stress response. Why? Because small talk is, by its very nature, unstructured and often insincere. It requires you to mask your true feelings. It demands that you perform. When you're forced to act interested in a topic you couldn't care less about, you're creating a state of cognitive dissonance. Your internal reality doesn't match your external behavior. For a highly sensitive brain that values authenticity above everything else, this dissonance registers as danger. It triggers the release of cortisol, the stress hormone. So while your coworker is happily chatting about their cat's dietary restrictions, your body is chemically reacting as if you're under attack. You exist in a state of low-grade fight or flight. You want to escape the conversation not because you're rude, but because your nervous system is desperately trying to return to a state of safety and balance. Now here's where things get really fascinating. There's a reason society pushes small talk so heavily, and why you feel so alienated by it. It comes down to our evolutionary history as tribal creatures. Think about sports fans. Two complete strangers can meet in a bar, discover they support the same team, and instantly they're high-fiving like old friends. They've established a tribal bond through a superficial identifier. Small talk serves the exact same evolutionary purpose. It's a quick, low-stakes way to check for tribal affiliation. Are you one of us? Do you follow the social rules? Talking about the weather is essentially the human equivalent of dogs sniffing each other. It's a safety check, a password exchange. However, recent psychological research suggests that people who despise small talk often have lower tribal instincts, but significantly higher needs for intimate individual connection. You don't particularly care about the tribe. You care about the soul. You're what psychologists might call a depth seeker. You're willing to bypass all the safety checks. You want to jump straight into deep water. You want to know what someone fears at 3 in the morning. You want to know what keeps them awake. You won. The traffic is meaningless. These are just obstacles blocking the path to the real treasure, the other person's authentic self. This creates a massive, painful conflict. The world operates on the frequency of the tribe, but you're permanently tuned to the frequency of the individual. You're trying to download massive files of emotional data on a network that was built for sending simple text messages. This fundamental mismatch leads to a phenomenon I call social starvation. You can be surrounded by people all day long. You can talk until your throat aches, and yet you go home feeling completely, utterly alone. You're starving for real connection while drowning in empty conversation. It's like eating cotton candy when you're dying for a steak. It fills your mouth, it keeps your jaw moving, but it provides absolutely zero nutritional value to your soul. So where does this leave you? Does this mean you're doomed to be the outcast at every social gathering? Are you destined to be that person standing awkwardly by the snack table, pretending to check your phone? Absolutely not. It's time for the reframe. It's time to stop viewing your disdain for small talk as a social deficit and start seeing it for what it really is, a superpower. You're an efficient emotional investor. You're not cold, you're selective. In a world obsessed with the quantity of connections, you're the guardian of quality. Think about it this way. Most people are like streetlights. They cast a wide, shallow glow that touches everyone a little bit but illuminates nothing deeply. You're a laser. You have a focused, intense beam that cuts straight through darkness. When you do connect with someone, you don't just exchange pleasantries. You exchange pieces of your soul. You create a bond that's stronger, more resilient, and infinitely more rewarding than 1,000 conversations about weekend plans or traffic jams. This is your biological advantage. By rejecting the shallow, you're preserving your energy for the profound. You're saving your dopamine for the interactions that actually change lives, that actually matter. Your brain isn't malfunctioning. It's filtering. It's filtering out the noise so you can actually hear the music. And once you accept this, truly accept it, the pressure falls away. You no longer have to feel guilty for not enjoying the party. You can give yourself permission to opt out of a game you never wanted to play. You can stop forcing yourself to be a generalist in a world that desperately needs specialists. Because here's the truth nobody tells you. The world has enough people who can talk about nothing. What the world is genuinely starving for is people who are brave enough to talk about something. People willing to ask the hard questions. People willing to listen to the real answers. That's you. So the next time you find yourself trapped in a conversation about traffic patterns or the local sports team, and you feel that familiar wave of boredom mixed with panic, don't judge yourself. Recognize it for what it is. Acknowledge that your brain is simply signaling that this is low-value data, that this exchange isn't feeding you. And then, if you can, if the situation allows it, try to steer the ship. Ask a question that matters, take a risk. Pivot from the what to the why. Instead of asking, what do you do? Try what's exciting you right now. Instead of how was your weekend? Try what's something you've been thinking about lately. You might be surprised. You might discover that the person across from you is just as starved for depth as you are. They were just waiting for someone brave enough to break the surface, to dive below the shallow end. And if they don't respond well, if they look at you strangely, if they retreat back into safer territory, that's okay too. Actually, that's valuable information. You have your answer. You can politely disengage and move on, knowing that you honored your own nature. You're not here to please everyone. You're not designed to connect with everyone. You're here to find the few who speak your language, the ones who are worth the energy investment. Here's something else worth understanding. Your need for depth doesn't make you superior to others. It doesn't make you more intelligent or more evolved. It simply makes you different. It makes you compatible with a smaller subset of people. But when you do find your people, the connection runs deeper than most friendships ever will. Think of it like radio frequencies. Most people operate on AM radio, widely available, easy to access, but limited in depth and quality. You operate on a specialized frequency that requires both parties to have specific equipment. The signal is rarer, harder to find, but when you do find it, the clarity is breathtaking. The depth is extraordinary. This is why you might have only 2 or 3 truly close friends, while others seem to have dozens. It's not that you're incapable of forming connections. It's that your threshold for what counts as a real connection is significantly higher. You're not interested in collecting acquaintances like trading cards. You're interested in forging bonds that can withstand time, distance, and difficulty. There's another aspect to this we need to address: the energy cost of masking. When you engage in small talk, you're not just bored, you're actively masking. You're performing a version of yourself that doesn't match your internal experience. For neurotypical individuals who enjoy small talk, this performance is minimal. They genuinely are interested, or at least neutral enough that no performance is required. But for you, the gap between your internal state and your external presentation is enormous. You're essentially acting in a play where everyone else is just being themselves. And acting, as any performer will tell you, is exhausting. It requires constant vigilance. You have to monitor your facial expressions, your tone of voice, your body language. You have to generate appropriate responses on cue. You have to laugh at the right moments, nod at the right times, ask follow-up questions that demonstrate engagement you don't actually feel. This is called social masking, and it has a documented cognitive cost. Studies on autistic individuals and introverts show that prolonged masking leads to burnout, anxiety, and even depression. It depletes your executive function. It drains your ability to make decisions, regulate emotions, and think clearly. So when you come home from a party or a networking event and you feel completely wiped out, even though you just talked to people, this is why. You weren't just talking. You were performing an elaborate, energetically expensive charade. You were translating between 2 different languages in real time, all while pretending it was effortless. And here's the insidious part. Because everyone else seems fine, because they seem energized by these interactions, you start to believe something is wrong with you. You start to pathologize your own needs. You wonder if you're depressed, if you're antisocial, if you need to work on yourself. But the reality is much simpler. You're just incompatible with that particular social format. You wouldn't call a deep-sea fish broken because it can't survive in a shallow pond. The fish isn't defective, it's just in the wrong environment. This brings us to a crucial strategy: environmental design. Instead of trying to force yourself to enjoy shallow water swimming, you need to design your life around deep water diving. This means being ruthlessly selective about the social situations you agree to. It means giving yourself permission to decline invitations that you know will drain you. It means seeking out environments where depth is welcomed, even encouraged. Where do you find these environments? Here are some possibilities. Book clubs that focus on meaningful literature, philosophy discussion groups, writing workshops, volunteer organizations centered around causes you genuinely care about, small, intimate gatherings instead of large parties, one-on-one coffee meetings instead of group happy hours, online communities built around niche interests where people naturally discuss things at length. These are the ecosystems where your particular wiring becomes an asset rather than a liability. Where asking "why do you think that?" isn't weird, it's welcome. Where people lean in rather than back away when the conversation gets real. You also need to become skilled at what I call social triage. Not every interaction deserves your full energy. Some conversations are purely transactional. The barista taking your order, the coworker asking about your weekend in passing, the neighbor making small talk by the mailbox. These don't require depth. They're not opportunities for connection. They're social obligations that can be handled with minimal energy expenditure. The key is learning to distinguish between situations where depth is possible and situations where it's not. Save your energy for the former. Use polite autopilot for the latter. This isn't being fake, it's being strategic with a limited resource. There's also a middle ground worth exploring, the art of the meaningful small talk pivot. Sometimes you're stuck in a conventional conversation, but there's potential beneath the surface. The person might actually want to go deeper but doesn't know how to initiate it. They're following the script because that's what feels safe. In these moments, you can act as the bridge. You can acknowledge the surface-level topic, but then gently redirect. For example, if someone asks about your weekend, instead of just listing activities, you might say, "It was good. I finished reading this book that really made me rethink some things." Do you ever read something that kind of shifts your perspective? You've acknowledged their question, but you've also opened a door to something deeper. Most people won't walk through that door, but some will, and those some are worth finding. Now let's address the elephant in the room, loneliness. If you're someone who hates small talk and craves depth, you're probably familiar with a very particular kind of loneliness. It's not the loneliness of being alone. Many of you probably enjoy solitude. It's the loneliness of being surrounded by people and still feeling completely unseen. It's the loneliness of speaking a language that no one else seems to understand. This type of loneliness can be more painful than physical isolation because it comes with a sense of alienation. It makes you feel like you're on the wrong planet, like everyone else got a manual for human interaction that you never received. But here's what you need to understand. This feeling, while painful, is also temporary and situational. It's not a permanent state. It's a function of being in an environment that doesn't match your needs. When you do find your people, and you will, this loneliness dissolves almost instantly. It's replaced by a sense of coming home, of finally being understood without having to explain yourself. The mistake many depth seekers make is trying to fill this loneliness with quantity. They force themselves to maintain surface-level friendships, to attend social events they hate, to engage in endless small talk, all in an attempt to not feel alone. But this doesn't work. It's like trying to quench your thirst by drinking salt water. It temporarily fills you, but ultimately makes the thirst worse. What you need isn't more connections. What you need is the right connections. Even just one or two people who truly get you will do more for your well-being than 100 acquaintances. Let's also talk about the dark side of being a depth seeker, because there is one, and it's important to acknowledge. People who crave deep connection are often more vulnerable to manipulation. You're willing to skip the shallow safety checks that protect most people. You're willing to trust quickly if someone appears to match your depth. This makes you prime targets for narcissists, energy vampires, and emotional manipulators who have learned to mimic depth as a hunting strategy. They know that people like you are starving. They know you'll open your doors wide to anyone who seems to speak your language, and they use this against you. They love bomb you with seeming intensity and authenticity, only to reveal later that it was all performance. That beneath their philosophical musings and late-night conversations, there's nothing but emptiness and need. Learning to distinguish between genuine depth and performed depth is a crucial skill. Real depth is consistent over time. It doesn't just appear when someone wants something from you. It doesn't disappear the moment the relationship requires actual work or sacrifice. Genuine depth seekers are interested in mutual exchange, not just extraction. But we'll explore that more thoroughly another time. For now, what matters is this. Embrace your need for depth. Stop apologizing for it. Stop trying to force yourself to enjoy conversations that bore you. Stop feeling guilty for being selective about who gets your time and energy. Your disdain for small talk isn't a bug in your programming. It's a feature. It's a highly sophisticated filter that protects you from wasting your precious life energy on connections that don't nourish you. It's a compass that points you toward the relationships that will actually sustain you, challenge you, and help you grow. The world needs people like you. It needs people who refuse to settle for surface-level everything, who insist that conversations should mean something, who are brave enough to ask real questions and strong enough to hear real answers, who create spaces where others feel safe enough to remove their masks and speak their truth. You're not broken, you're not weird, you're not antisocial. You're just playing a different game than most people. A harder game, yes. A game with fewer players. But when you win, when you find your people and build your tribe of fellow depth seekers, the reward is beyond anything the shallow end could ever offer. So the next time someone approaches you with crazy weather we're having, and you feel that familiar sinking sensation, remember this: you're not failing at being human. You're just refusing to settle. And that refusal, that high standard, that insistence on depth, that's not a weakness. That's your strength. Now, before you go, I need to tell you something important. Understanding why you hate small talk is just the beginning. There's a darker dimension to this sensitivity that we've only touched on. There's a specific vulnerability in your empathy that leaves you wide open to manipulation by narcissists and energy vampires. They've learned to recognize people like you, and they know exactly how to exploit your hunger for authentic connection. In the next video, I'm going to expose exactly how this trap works and give you the psychological tools you need to protect yourself without closing off completely. This isn't about becoming cynical or building walls. It's about developing discernment, about learning to tell the difference between someone who genuinely speaks your language and someone who's just learned enough words to fool you. You don't want to miss that one. It might save you years of painful relationships and emotional recovery. Hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you're the first to know when it drops. I'll see you in the deep end.